We tend to think of science and religion as complete opposites, right? But what if that's not the whole story? An essay by Jonathan Singleton puts forward this pretty wild idea. What if these two massive forces in our world actually come from the exact same, long-forgotten place? Let's dive into that.
And this is the view we all know, isn't it? On one side, you've got science. It demands hard proof, evidence, data before it'll believe anything. Then, on the other side, there's religion, which often asks for faith, belief without all the proof. It feels like a fundamental conflict, and it's where so many arguments start and end.
But Singleton says, hold on, this clean, simple divide might be a little too neat. He wants us to turn that scientific microscope around and point it back at science itself, and ask a pretty tough question. Is science really as purely evidence-based as we've always been told?
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. The author's whole idea is that faith isn't just a religious thing. He argues that science itself is actually built on accepting certain ideas before we have all the answers, especially when we're talking about the biggest mysteries out there.
So what are these so-called cracks in the foundation of science? Well, Singleton points to a couple of massive questions that he says show the limits of what we know for sure. The kind of stuff that probably keeps scientists up at night.
First up, the pyramids. Think about it. We can map galaxies light years away, we can edit genes, but we still can't say with 100% certainty how the ancient Egyptians built the pyramids with the tools they had. We've got theories, sure, but we can't actually do it. For Singleton, this isn't just a cool history puzzle. It's a hint that maybe there was a kind of knowledge, or, as he puts it, a supernatural intelligence that we've just lost.
And then there's the biggest question of all, the Big Bang. It's our best scientific theory for how the universe began, but it leaves this giant, unanswerable question mark. What was there before the Big Bang? The laws of physics as we know them say you can't get something from absolute nothing. So how did everything just pop into existence? That's a point where our current science just hits a wall.
So here's the author's big point. Whether you're looking at the pyramids or the Big Bang, we're accepting these huge foundational ideas without having all the proof. In a way, we're operating on a kind of scientific belief. We're accepting the what without fully knowing the how or the why.
And all of this brings us to the very heart of the essay. The author lays out this speculative history. It's a thought experiment, really, to explain how these two worldviews that seem so opposed could have actually grown from a single unified source of knowledge.
So here's the story Singleton imagines. Picture this. A long time ago, some kind of higher intelligence spoke directly to people. Then, we invented writing to make sure we didn't forget all this incredible knowledge. But over many generations, something really important changed. We started focusing only on the written texts themselves instead of the original source. And eventually, that direct connection was just gone.
And according to this theory, that moment, that loss of connection to the source, is the crucial turning point. It's the moment when that single river of knowledge splits, sending humanity's search for truth down two totally different paths. This is what he calls the Great Schism.
And this table just lays it out so clearly. You had one group, the future scientists, who were obsessed with preserving the information, the what. Their whole method was about studying and analyzing the texts. Then you had the other group, the future religious followers, who were focused on maintaining the connection, the how. Their method was all about tradition and obedience. But look at the outcome for both. It's exactly the same. They both lost direct contact with the source.
So you end up with this situation where both sides got lost in the paperwork, They became so fixated on studying the scriptures or the scientific papers that they completely forgot why those things were written down to begin with. They forgot to look up from the page and remember the living source it was all supposed to point to.
And this gets to the real heart of the problem, which Singleton sums up with this perfect metaphor. He says that science and religion are both trying to figure out a story.
So, it's like they have information that starts from the middle of the book. They're both missing the first couple of chapters.
So, if we entertain this idea for a second, what does it mean for us right now? Well, it suggests our modern world is built on this really deep divide, and it might just explain why it's so incredibly hard to get these two fundamental ways of seeing the world to talk to each other.
And that fragmentation, it never stopped. If anything, it's gotten worse. The path of science splintered into a million different subjects, physics, biology, chemistry, you name it. And the path of religion, it's split into thousands of different faiths and denominations. It's like everyone is holding a tiny piece of the puzzle, which makes it even harder to see the big picture.
And this split has real, everyday consequences. Singleton points right at the confusion we create for kids. In science class, a child learns about the Big Bang. In another setting, they learn a divine creation story. We basically hand them two different chapter 1s and expect them to figure it out, never stopping to explain how both might actually be part of the same, much bigger story.
And so, after all this, the thought experiment leaves us right here, with one last, really big question. If both science and religion are starting their stories from the middle of the book, then maybe the goal isn't about proving one side right and the other wrong. Maybe the real challenge is, how do we ever find the beginning?